Welcome to Behavioral Grooves. My name is Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. This is the only podcast where you're going to get a dose of why we do what we do, combined with a spoonful of music.
Woohoo! Yes. You like that spoonful of music, don't you?
I think it's a great way of thinking about the way that we do it.
All right. So I have a question for you.
All right.
Actually, I have to paint the picture.
Oh, so you're going to bloviate.
I'm going to bloviate here.
Right.
So imagine that there are aliens that you have just discovered and they've come down to Earth and they take the form of a two-dimensional drawing, right? And there's two of them. And one of them is very angular, very sharp, kind of like a multi-pronged, star that's really pointy and angular. Okay. And the other one is more rounded and cloud-like. And there are these two things. And you know that their names are Bouba and Kiki, but you don't know which is which. So is the angular one Bouba or is the angular one Kiki or vice versa? So if you had to guess, and the weight of the world depended on you getting this right, because if you didn't, they would blow up the world, right?
Wow.
So
this is more than just like a cocktail party test, huh?
They are blowing up the damn world if you mess up their names. All right. So which one is Kiki? The rounded, flowing one? Or is it the angular one? And then which one is Bouba?
No problem. The rounded one is Bouba. The angular one is Kiki.
You win. Whoa! The world is saved. Thank you, Tim. So we've talked about this in the past, right? There's been actual research, not on the aliens coming in. That's not the thing.
I like that as a little spin on it, though. Add some gravity to the decision you're making.
No, but they've done this research on visual shapes and the sounds that come, that are associated with it. And it started in the 1920s with Wolfgang Kohler, who, how sounds and visual shapes align. And he was the actual one who used Kiki and Bouba, I believe. I'm not positive on that. And then they've been doing more of these experiments in the early 2000s. It kind of got brought back up, and a lot of it is around, branding and naming and various different pieces of that. But over 95% of respondents selected the curvy shape as Bouba and the jagged one as Kiki. And that's across multitude. It's not just U.S., it's not just European. I mean, this has been
variety of languages,
worldwide studies in different cultures and different languages. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty consistent element going across that. So this Bouba and Kiki thing.
Yeah.
All right. We've been talking about it, and
it's such a compelling, little meme, right? It's just, it's such a cool little idea. I mean, why not? Right?
Well, but we've been using it in a different way, right? You and I have started talking about our brains as being Kiki brains or Bouba brains. and we did it out of just, it's a podcast and we had to come up with something. And so we did, and it was there. But
there's no research on that.
There is no research on that, but I think there should be, because I think there's something behind that. And this is what I want to groove on, right? I want to groove on this idea that there are such things as a Bouba brain and a Kiki brain.
Okay.
In our way of thinking and processing information and the way that we regurgitate that out. So in my definition of this, which again, there's no research to back this up. This is just Kurt pontificating on thinking through this in a thought experiment, right?
Okay.
Kiki brains are those brains that can articulate and remember very specific components. So
like history dates, citations,
names, who said what when,
facts, statistics.
Yes, those angular, very precise elements.
Okay.
Kiki, right?
Okay.
That's there.
Okay.
And the Bouba brains are more contextual and how do these things fit together and the concepts, but the date and who the researcher was. No, I understand. This concept has this element that parlays into this one, and more more curvature and different
I
things.
I wish this was. I wish this wasn't a podcast right now and was a video, so that our listeners could see you're making, when you're talking about Kiki, you've got your fingers pointed and you're making all these angular shapes, and you've got this jujitsu kind of cutting motion with your arms. And when you're talking about Bouba, it's like you're on psychedelics. I just wish that the listeners could. So I'm saying that so that they get the full effect.
Full effect of how I'm thinking about this.
Okay, so in this thesis of yours, is our brain one way or the other?
No. It's like any personality component. We are on a continuum of them, and it changes based on the context and based on how we're showing up in that day.
Bueno.
So for instance, you have this recollection of artists and music that just blows my mind. And somebody talks about some, strange jazz fusion, band, and you're like, oh yeah, and this, and the drummer was this, and he played with that. And it's like, holy shit, how do you do that? I don't understand. And so you have that, and
so you tend to frame yourself in this Bouba brain. You tend to frame that you're coming away with the vibe, with just the overall experience, the general nuggets, and not the specifics, right?
So
and
yes.
that's because that's how you think that you tend to think about this stuff, right?
Well, it shows up
because of band names, and you didn't memorize the drummer from that obscure jazz album that you listened to one time.
Well, but it's also the way. So I have a hard time with names, right? Hell, I have a hard time with faces, but
Me, Tim.
Good. I thought that was it. I wasn't quite sure, but I have that where I'm searching for the specific research or who did that, and I can't find it, but I can relate the basic concepts of that, right? And I can go online and find it, and I can do a good search to be able to Google what it is that I need to get, and I can find all of that information.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm pretty good at those general concepts, and then applying. How do those concepts get applied, or how do they not get applied? And I'm not saying that people with Kiki minds can't do that. And it's the same thing. People that have more of a Bouba mind like me, I can remember, you know what? I can tell you, some very specifics in certain situations. And now you're looking at me like I should do some. And I'm like, oh, no, shit. See,
that's right.
Yeah, all right. Loss aversion was Kahneman and Tversky. There you go. There you go.
Nailed it.
So... But we have this, we ebb and flow, is my belief. We ebb and flow between this. And people might be going, well, so what? Yes, some people have better memories and some people don't. But I think that there's a way that if we use this, just like we use, our personality assessments, as ways to help us communicate or to improve how we communicate with others. I think there are those that we could use Kiki and Bouba brains in that similar manner. And
I think it's really interesting. I think about our conversation with Aaron Snyder from when he was at Lexicon.
Yeah.
These brand building organizations that design brands, that are creating designer brands, I suppose. So they're making up names in some cases to create an image in our mind. So certainly the Bouba and Kiki images and the words, do elicit some specific things because they're relying, brand developers are relying on these things to evoke a sharper or a softer image for us, right? So that's at play. And I like your concept, this whole idea that we would tend to have one or the other. It's
a predominant, right? That we tend to fall into, just like a personality. Again, in a personality, I might be a driver most of the time, but then I fall back into being amiable in other times, right? Given context, given the situation. And I think the same thing happens in the way that we think. And so I think it can help us in understanding how other people process information.
Yeah.
And so I've done this. I will not have arguments with some people that I know that have Kiki brains because I know that in those situations, I will not be able to process and keep up with that their line of thought. They will bring in facts and figures and different things, and I then have to. I can't answer to those specifics
on the fly.
On the fly.
Can you prepare for it?
I can prepare for it, which is a very good thing. I can definitely come in and prepare for it. I can definitely come back and say, let me get back to you on that, and then I will go in and research and come back with my specific answers to it. But I can have that conversation and say, let's talk about the general concepts. Don't bring in the specifics, and let's focus in on, the broader, big scale, components. And I'm talking about this oftentimes in political or religious conversations,
especially right
arguments,
now,
right? That we're having, and there are people that when they get into, well, what about this and this and this? This specific documentation and this specific policy and this specific aspect, and I'm like, I don't know those specific policies or aspects, so I need to go research them in order to come back. I can't articulate that off the top of my head, and so I think it gives us a way of helping each other understand how we think and then how we can communicate better, because in an argument is probably the wrong term to say. It's just having a conversation where you're trying to tell somebody else why you're thinking the way that you think.
Or is it's maybe more even like a persuasive conversation, right? Where you are trying to persuade and you feel like you want to have facts, you want to rely on logic, and sometimes that can be evasive to the Bouba mind, right? Mm-hmm. Right, because it's easier to pull up the big general picture and say, well, this is what I'm relating to. And that feels less, the way that we oftentimes relate to validity has to do with the specificity.
Right.
Like the more specific we can be, the more valid we think the comment is.
Well, and I think if people are watching two people debating and one person is bringing up very specifics and those aspects and one person is being more general, if you had to ask them which is the more intelligent argument, and which person is actually more intelligent, they're going to say the Kiki brain, who brings up the specifics, right?
That's right.
So there's that aspect that comes into it as well. So that's my theory. And,
that's what we're going with.
That's what I'm going with until somebody, gets some dissuading evidence, which I'm sure so one of our listeners will go, Kurt, that's stupid. Here's why. And then write us back on that, because I'd like to know. And
it's not just memory. I think that there has been some research in the world of around memory and how we remember things and our likelihood to remember a specific date versus a general experience, right? There has been some work on memory, but you're talking about just the way we experience the world and the way that we think about each other could be impacted in a really positive way just by sort of being aware this person is more of a Kiki brain versus a Bouba brain.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage, if we've got some academics or people who are just interested in researching this, dial it up. Yeah. Let's see where that could go. I think it could be really interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
So with that was our grooving session today. Thanks for indulging us, listeners, and hopefully you found it interesting, and maybe your own Kiki brain is going, all right, I can do this, and this, and the very specifics, and your Bouba brain is just, here, let's take this all in right now.
And ideally, you can do both.
Yes, of course. We always can do both. So thank you for listening, and share this with your friends. If you think somebody would be interested in this, share it with them, and leave us a review if you would be so kind. We would love it.
Yeah, thank you.